Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense, where we try to make some sense out of the nonsense either tonight or last night or the night before or the night before. You know, last night I challenged you, right? I challenged you to think about this process. I'll keep my vow. God spits me out of the fish, right? If you want to get spitted, if you wanted to get spitted out of the fish, come on, somebody just write down that's not a real word, Andy, right? If you want to be spit out of the mouth of a fish, maybe you got to keep your vows. Or maybe it should say something like this: how to get spit out of the mouth of a fish that God has placed you in. Underneath it, keep your vows. Oh, maybe we could just shorten it and just say keep your vows. That might work, right? Keep your vows. If you promised God that you're going to go talk for him, then you talk for him, regardless of what that looks like. You know how this works, right? God says, Andy, do you love me? Yep, I love you more than anything in the world. Andy, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you more than anything in the world. Andy, do you really love me? Yep, more than anything in the world. You know that I love you. You know all things, God. I love you more than anything in this world. Andy, go have a hard conversation with your son. Lord, I think Joe Schmo loves you more, right? I think somebody else loves you more than I love you, right? We don't want to do those kind of things. We love God with everything. Oh, God's everything until he tells us to do something hard. So we learned last night, right? Jonah finally said, I'll keep my vow. I'll do what I said I was going to do. And God spits him out of the big fish. Who's more excited about this whole thing, do you think? Jonah or the big fish that's had a stomach ache the entire time? Right? I think the fish was probably a little relieved too, right? To get rid of Jonah. He's a bad apple, a rotten apple, right? Sitting in the stomach of the fish, right? So I want you to understand that the process continues. And here's what happens. Jonah goes to Nineveh. He finally ended up exactly where he was supposed to be. It's been a long trip, man. Long trip. And he finally gets there. Now, it's a long trip, not because God made it a long trip like he did with the Israelites, right? It's because Jonah made it a long trip. Jonah refused to just do what he was asked to do, what he promised God that he would do. And he does not want to do it, but he's doing it anyway. I want to camp on that for just a few minutes, right? There are lots of times where God is going to use unwilling, right, people to give his message. People who don't want to do it. Right? Don't think that every pastor that sits up and gives a message and a hit, like that they wanted to do it. Don't think that everything that happens good when you get a cake from your neighbor, when you get a raspberry pie from your neighbor, don't think that your neighbor necessarily was going, yeah, I want to do it. Maybe they're just simply being obedient. Maybe they went, God, I do not want to make a raspberry pie for Andy Fred. Don't want to do it. Don't want anything to do with it. Right? Maybe that's what they're going to say. But then they say, but God, I'll do it. I'll go. I'll do it. There's a parable, right? It talks about two sons. The first son is asked to go to the field, and he says, yep, I'll go, and he doesn't go. The second son is asked to go to the field. He says, I'm not going, and then he goes. Jesus asked the question, which one did the will of the Father? Which one was obedient? Right? Again, sometimes God uses unwilling, unsuspecting people who are just angry. Right? Let's see. Haman walked Mordecai around the city and said, here's what happens when the king has favor on somebody. Did he like Mordecai? Nope, he had a gallows waiting for him. Didn't like him at all. Right? So Jonah's being obedient, and Jonah's giving God's message to a group of people. And what happens? The city repents. Right? God can use a donkey. God can use you and I. God uses people who are willing to be obedient. You don't have to like. Now, is it good for you to get the heart of God and do it for the right reasons, the right moment, the right time? Yes, we preach that. No, don't do it if you can't do it for the right reasons. That's not exactly a biblical concept. It's mostly a biblical concept. get to the right heart and do it. But the biblical concept is you need to be obedient. Right now, God chastises. God says, hey, my people, they sacrifice to me, but their hearts are far from me. God recognizes that. He's not making an excuse saying it's okay. But God said, I'm still going to use them. I'm still going to use people. I'll use whoever I want, however I want. So understand that God can move an entire city into a state of repentance. Even if you don't really feel like it. Even if you don't feel like you want to get dressed and get up and get going. Even if you don't feel like you want to go to church. Even if you don't want to, he can use you. Right? It's not about feelings. It's about obedience. So, how does God want to use you tonight? Where does God want to use you? When does God want to use you? Are you willing to be used? Will you keep your vows? Are you heading for the big fish? Can God move an entire city into a state of repentance because you were obedient? Would you let God do that? Would you let God do that? Hey, we're going to finish this up in the next couple nights. We'll talk to you next time. Nightly Nonsense.